The all-new 2023 Sportage is an incredibly important vehicle for Kia because this is now their best-selling vehicle and it's playing in the best-selling segment in America. This is Kia's answer to the RAV4, the CR-V, and of course, the closely related Hyundai Tucson. For the first time in 2023, we're finally going to be getting a hybrid Sportage and a plug-in hybrid model. Today we're taking a look at the hybrid version. If you want to know about the non-hybrid model, that's going to be in a different video. The two big changes for this generation Sportage are that it has grown considerably over the outgoing model, now making this the roomiest in the segment on the inside. And the second thing is that the design is definitely adventurous for Kia. Rather than making a smaller version of the Telluride or a larger version of the Seltos, they decided that the Sportage should continue to have a style all on its own. And it is definitely distinctive. Let me know what you think about this down there in the comment section. I wasn't sure about it when I first saw it, but I think in person it looks better than it did in the original photos. We have a very distinctive boomerang shape there to the accent lights, full LED headlights in all models, but we still have incandescent turn signals up top. Since this is the hybrid model, the front end does change a little bit. There's sort of a parametric shape here to the grille, and then we have a variation on the tiger nose grille that we've seen in Kias for a while. It has really been miniaturized and sort of split apart. We have a little bit of a dip down right there on the hood line, and then a little bit of a rise over here on this section of the bumper. Let me know what you think about the design down there in the comment section. I think I like this look better than the Tucson, and it certainly is a little bit more elegant, a little bit more distinctive than the RAV4 or the CR-V. After having a lineup that was really sedan heavy, Kia is doubling down on crossovers, and now they have arguably a wider selection than most mainstream auto companies. Smaller than this is the Kia Seltos, then larger than this we have the Sorento, which is a 3-row, and then we have the even larger Kia Telluride. Now this, at 183.5 inches long, has grown significantly versus the outgoing model. It is a full 7 inches longer, and definitely on the extreme long end of the compact crossover segment. This is now longer than the Tucson and longer than the Nissan Rogue, about 3.5 inches longer than the RAV4. And that's how this gets to class-leading legroom. We have over 82 inches of combined legroom, that is front row plus second row. That is significantly more than we find in a RAV4 and decently above the CR-V as well, and a cargo area that is the largest in the segment, and actually about the same size as the cargo area that we find in a Ford Edge. Even the distinctively mid-sized Hyundai Santa Fe has a cargo area smaller than the new Sportage. That's definitely turning over a new leaf because historically the Sportage has been on the small side of the segment. A somewhat surprising touch on a model very focused on fuel economy are the wide tires, 235 with tires on all hybrid versions of this. And if you take a look at some of the competition, you'll notice that the RAV4 hybrid only has 225s. The rear end design is definitely a bit more traditional than the front end design, and I do see just a hint of EV6 in the way that these tail lamp modules are connected with one another. As we've seen in other Sportage models, it has a very vertical rear end, so if you're looking for more of a defined bumper feel, you might want to look elsewhere, but this definitely makes for very efficient interior packaging. Sort of evoking exhaust tips, this silver trim wraps from one side around to the other. These are just reflectors down at the bottom, well-hidden parking sensors, and then hidden exhaust tips under the rear bumper. The backup light, it's this tiny thing hidden right there just below the license plate in the middle. Under the hood, we find Kia's fairly unique hybrid system. This is based around a 1.6-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, definitely making this different than the hybrid system that we find in the RAV4. The engine in its own right produces 177 horsepower and a healthy amount of torque, but when combined with the electric motor on the other side of the engine bay, it adds 59 horsepower to the equation, giving you 227 horsepower total and 258 pound-feet of torque. Power is routed to the ground via a standard 6-speed automatic transmission that also makes this very different feeling than the Escape hybrid or the CR-V hybrid or the RAV4 hybrid, which all use very different architectures. If you're looking for a hybrid with high fuel economy that drives like a regular crossover, then you want to put this on your shopping list. Everything together gives you 43 miles per gallon combined if you choose front-wheel drive and 38 miles per gallon if you choose all-wheel drive. That is 2 miles per gallon less than we find in the RAV4 hybrid, but this is a regular, traditional all-wheel drive system. It has a mechanical linkage to the rear, so as far as traction goes, this is going to be substantially similar to the non-hybrid model. So if you live in a climate with a lot of ice, a lot of snow, etc., you might want to choose this over the RAV4 hybrid because its all-wheel drive system definitely has a peculiar feel and lower capability in general than a mechanical all-wheel drive system like this. The tow rating takes a bit of a drop versus the non-hybrid model, 2,000 pounds when properly equipped here versus 2,500 for the non-hybrid. Front seat comfort has proved quite good over the relatively short day that we've been driving this model so far. The driver's seat in this trim has a two-way adjustable lumbar support and a power driver's seat, but in this mid-level trim, we don't have a power passenger seat. There is a tilt telescopic steering column with a reasonable range of motion, however. The big change happens in the back seat, where the Sportage has gone from one of the lowest combined legroom figures to one of the highest at 82.7 inches of combined legroom. We have more combined legroom in the Sportage than you'll find in a lot of mid-size options. So if you're looking for a crossover that can more easily accommodate larger adults in the back seat or child seats, especially rear-facing child seats, you definitely want to put this on your shopping list. Even with this large panoramic moonroof here, I have about an inch of headroom left. If I scoot over here to the middle seat, and actually still pretty decent because of the way this panoramic moonroof opening is shaped. If I scoot all the way back to the right side here, the front seat is not all the way back in its tracks, but it's pretty far rearward. You can see I still have about 5 inches of legroom left. The Sportage is a good option also, not only if you're a taller person trying to fit in the rear, but if you're a taller person trying to fit in the front, because the front seat rails move further rearward than most of the competition. The rear seats also offer a reasonable amount of recline to them. You can put the seats in a very upright position to help square off that cargo area in the back, or you can put it in a position that's about 8 inches reclined versus that. From this angle, it's pretty easy to see the difference in recline between those two seat backs, one at its most upright and one at its most reclined. This particular model has the dual tone interior that you'll see in a bit. Navy and sort of an off-white there. 2 large air vents for the rear seat passengers. USB charge-only ports integrated into the rear seat backs. We have bag holders there, and this is really interesting, sort of a jacket holder or whatever holder you might want to use that for on the backs of either headrest. At 39.6 cubic feet of cargo capacity behind the second row, this now has the largest cargo area in this segment. Decently above even big options like the RAV4 and CR-V, while simultaneously giving us the most legroom on the inside. That's one of the advantages to now being on the long side of this segment. For those that currently own the last generation Sportage, this is a full 33% more cargo capacity than you found in the previous generation Sportage, and there is even cargo area under the load floor and a temporary spare tire even in the hybrid model. The hybrid model gets the exact same cargo area as the non-hybrid. Although Kia has yet to release specifications on the upcoming plug-in hybrid version of the Sportage, I wouldn't be surprised if it lost a little bit of cargo room, but it's probably going to be fairly slight versus what we see in some of the competition. Probably not, however, the equal of the RAV4 Prime. As we look around the interior, keep in mind that I am in an EX trim. This is sort of the mid-level trim for the hybrid model, so you'll find some extra features in the top-end trim and fewer in the base model, of course. We have sliding sun visors for the driver and front passenger, a large panoramic moonroof, and this front section does open. Height adjustable shoulder belts for the driver and front passenger, and two-way adjustable headrests. Here you can see that sort of garment hanger integrated right there into the back of the headrest. Kia is gradually moving towards a leather-free future. The upholstery in this model is leather-free for the most part, although the steering wheel is still leather, which is kind of an interesting twist. This interior is a tri-tone design, so we have sort of an off-white, very light gray seat front, black for the seat sides and back, or charcoal, whatever you want to call that, and then lots of navy blue in here. So the upper portion of the door is the armrest right there. Those are navy blue, sort of that light gray insert right there, and then lots of navy blue on the dashboard as well. The dashboard design definitely has a lot of commonalities with recent Kia products, including this large dual screen setup that we're going to take a look at a bit that we first saw in the EV6. Over here on the passenger side of the dashboard, again, we have that dual color setup with the navy section right up there in soft touch materials, sort of a just gray trim strip right here. Different models will get different trims there, harder plastics lower. And then a fairly large glove compartment in all models. You can see the 2 passenger air vents right there. This has the larger infotainment system available. It's just over 12 inches. One interesting twist is that there are 2 LCD instrument clusters depending on the trim level you get. If you get the top end level, then the instrument cluster is the same size as this infotainment system, just over 12 inches. In this model, it appears to be about 10 inches. It is definitely small. You can see it's not quite as tall, not quite as wide as this screen over here. This, of course, gives us full screen Apple CarPlay or Android Auto integration. If we go back to the main Kia menu, you can see that this has the latest software version that we also find in the EV6. Also borrowed from the EV6 is this somewhat controversial button bank. All of these controls swap between climate controls and controls for that infotainment system with the press of this button right here. So you can see the power volume knob also becomes the temperature knob and power knob for the climate control system with the press of that button. This is something that I have gotten used to in the EV6 that we have as a long-term vehicle, but it isn't quite my preference. Now below that, we have a Qi wireless charging mat, USB input for the infotainment system, USB charge port there as well, controls for the heated and optionally controls for the ventilated seats right there, power button. The hybrid model gets a rotary style shifter, but we have basically the same sort of drive mode selector that we find in other models, including a function to command a lock of the center coupling, although it is not always a complete lock. We have a very interesting setup here for the cup holders. I'll push these in so you can see what this looks like. These sort of curl up into the side, right like that, and then you can deploy them with those two buttons and then put cups in there, or you can leave them curled up and then have access to this fairly large storage area. Between the center seats, we have a navy armrest. It's definitely softly padded that opens to reveal a pretty large storage compartment. Again, the full LCD cluster on the driver's side is a little bit smaller than that infotainment system. I didn't notice it at first, but if this bothers you, you can step up to the top end trim, which gets an LCD the same size as the infotainment system to the right of it. As with other full LCDs in Kias, there are selectable themes, but in here, really the only difference is the color that wraps around these digital gauges. Be sure and let me know what you think about this two-tone interior. I have to say I really like the combination of the dark blue and the ivory sections. This really has an elegant theme to it that we normally find only in the luxury segment. This reminds me a lot of some of the interior colors that we find in the BMW X7, for instance. This steering wheel has sport grips up top. It's a round design with a split bottom spoke, and it has paddle shifters on the back because this has a traditional automatic transmission. On the left side of the steering wheel, we find infotainment controls. On the right side, we find the controls for that multifunction LCD right there. But in typical Kia fashion, there's not a lot of adjustment here. It basically just cycles through things like the trip computer information, status of the vehicle's active safety systems, and the status of the all-wheel drive system. The first thing you're going to notice about the hybrid when you're a little bit further off the beaten path is how much more normal and conventional this feels than a RAV4 hybrid. Now, the feeling inside an Escape hybrid with all-wheel drive and a CR-V hybrid with all-wheel drive is largely similar because they also have mechanical all-wheel drive systems. But on the other hand, that is the main reason that these alternatives to the RAV4 don't have the RAV4's class-leading mileage of 40 mpg with all-wheel drive. And in real-world driving, you are likely going to get better fuel economy in the RAV4 versus some of these other options. But they all have very distinctive feels out on the road. A lot of folks say that the RAV4 and the Escape hybrid have CVTs. That is not technically correct. They use a planetary power split hybrid system that sometimes can feel like a CVT and sometimes can feel like an EV. The CR-V, on the other hand, feels like an EV most of the time because there is no mechanical direct connection to the engine under about 45 miles an hour. With this is going to feel basically like a regular compact crossover with a 6-speed automatic transmission because that is exactly what's going on under the hood. And we have the same kind of ground clearance that we find in the regular model as well, just about 8 inches or so in this particular model. That combination means that this feels very sure-footed out on a wide variety of different surfaces, whether we're talking about mild off-roading like we're attempting to do right here, where one wheel might kick itself up in the air, or they're talking about snow, ice, that sort of driving, etc. So if you live in a colder climate and you're looking for a compact crossover that's going to be a good fit out on some of those slipperier surfaces, this might be an excellent option. Now, on this particular surface, this might not look terribly technical, but something like a Mazda MCX-5 or a CX-30 might have difficulties on this particular section due to its ground clearance. Get this out on the road and you're definitely going to notice the difference between this and the Escape hybrid and the RAV4 hybrid, etc. We have those definite shifts from the 6-speed automatic transmission. And you're going to notice the difference in acceleration between this and the non-hybrid Sportage. This is probably going to go 0 to 60 in the same time as the hybrid Tucson, which is very closely related to this. That did 0 to 60 in 7 seconds. So my temporary score for this model is going to be 7 seconds for the hybrid version. The non-hybrid model, that's likely going to be pretty similar to the Tucson as well, right around 8.5 seconds, 0 to 60. So if you're looking for one of the swifter options, it's certainly going to be this. That 0 to 60 time is likely going to stack up very well against the RAV4 hybrid and the CR-V hybrid. Braking distances are likely going to be comparable to the Tucson hybrid as well, although you should know that braking feel is going to be a little bit different than the rest of the hybrid competition because of the design of this hybrid system. Because the power, even from the electric motor, is flowing through that 6-speed automatic transmission, when you're regen braking, it's flowing backwards the other way through that 6-speed automatic. So as you're slowing down, you will feel the transmission downshifting, and that results in slightly different brake pedal feel than we find in the competition. The upside for that is that if you're looking for something with a bit of a sportier vibe, you're certainly going to find it here. We have paddle shifters on the back of the steering wheel, and they command actual physical gear shifts. We also have a turbocharged engine with a healthy amount of torque. So even though power out of the engine alone is not going to be at the same level as, say, the base engine that we find in the RAV4, even if the battery is completely depleted and you're climbing a hill, you're going to find a feel that is substantially similar thanks to the great amount of torque. And when the road starts winding, you'll certainly notice a greater willingness to dance in the Sportage thanks to the wide tires and the way the suspension has been tuned. Now, this is not the overtly sportiest entry in the segment, as the Sportage has been in the past. Keep that in mind. 2 generations ago, the Kia Sportage was really trying to focus on being maybe a baby Acura RDX competitor. It had a turbocharged engine under the hood, it had a lot of power, and it had a really, really firm suspension tune. That is not this generation of Sportage. Instead, Kia has decided that the Sportage should be a little bit more off-road capable, a little bit bigger, a little bit softer tuned, a little bit more like the leaders in terms of sales in this segment. If you're looking for something a bit sportier in terms of a compact crossover, you may need to look outside the mainstream segment, because Kia was one of the last companies to try and give us something that was a bit more dynamic. And honestly, there really is nothing more dynamic from Mazda or from Volkswagen, etc. in this group. You would have to step up to something like an Acura RDX if you want that next level in handling precision, handling performance, and acceleration as well. The main benefit to Kia deciding to focus on a slightly softer ride, slightly more off-road capability, and obviously a little bit more family friendliness and cargo capacity is that the ride quality is definitely the best in the Sportage in a long time as well. This definitely handles large and small imperfections very nicely, and if you find yourself out on a rougher road surface like that gravel road that we were on, the ride is definitely well composed. And the other thing you'll notice is cabin quietness. The cabin definitely appears to be quieter than in previous generations of the Sportage, even though we have wider tires. That's also something that I noticed when I last drove the current generation Hyundai Tucson. These vehicles are very, very closely related, although obviously Kia and Hyundai are going in different directions in terms of the design and the kind of customers that they're trying to attract. Although there's not a lot of daylight between the driving nature of the Tucson and the Sportage, it does appear that the tweaks that they have made were to try and make the Sportage feel a little bit more connected, handle a little bit better, perhaps be a little bit more aggressive at downshifting the transmission, but mainly this is a more style-forward option both on the outside and on the inside. Fuel economy has been a little bit hard to determine since we haven't had too much time to drive this hybrid model, but if recent Kia hybrids are anything to go by, I suspect that this is going to get right around the EPA estimate in my usual daily driving. Now, the front-wheel drive model is obviously going to be the most efficient, and it is interesting that we lose a whopping 5 miles per gallon if you choose the all-wheel drive model, but I suspect I would probably choose the all-wheel drive model instead for the extra traction. But if you want to eke all the fuel economy out, and you want to beat your next door neighbor in his RAV4 hybrid in terms of fuel economy, you're going to want the front-wheel drive version. If you want to get your hands on the new hybrid Sportage, head down to your Kia dealer now, because this will be on sale shortly after you're watching this video, sometime around the end of second quarter 2022. And it's not going to cost as much as some of the competition, definitely less than the hybrid version of the Honda CR-V. The base version of the Sportage starts at $25,990. Opting for the hybrid bumps that up to $27,290. So it's not an enormous jump. And for that price increase, you're going to get 43 miles per gallon. So the payback period at today's current gas prices is definitely going to be under the average 3-year lease cycle in a new vehicle, about 2 years of the average ownership cycle. If you want your hybrid model with the mechanical all-wheel drive system, that will bump the price tag up to $29,090, just a little bit more than the RAV4 was at the time that I was recording this video. Although expect to see a price increase on that RAV4 hybrid for 2023. If you want your Kia Sportage completely loaded, you're going to pay $36,190 for the top-end trim, plus destination, plus of course tax, title, license, all that good stuff, and other paint options. Really, the only option on that top model is going to be the paint option and some dealer-installed accessories. So any way you slice it, this is going to be a really good deal as far as a hybrid compact crossover goes in America. Now, how does it compare exactly to the RAV4 and CR-V hybrid and the Escape hybrid? For that video, you're going to have to wait until I can get my hands on this at home to run it through my usual battery of comparisons and tests, but right off the bat, I can tell you this is about as fast 0 to 60 as the all-wheel drive version of the RAV4 hybrid. Fuel economy looks to be pretty good as well. In the Hyundai Tucson hybrid, we definitely reported fuel economy pretty similar, but not quite at the same level as the RAV4 hybrid, but you have the advantage of the mechanical all-wheel drive system. And if you prefer the feel of a traditional automatic, we definitely have that here, and we do not have that in the RAV4. Also, the interior feels more premium in here. We have more features, gadgets, gizmos, etc. available in the Sportage than we find available in the RAV4, especially that enormous infotainment system, which you're going to find on most of the models on dealer lots, and the really big instrument cluster as well. This particular model is an approximately mid-range trim EX model, and it was about $32,000. And for this price tag, you already get that dual screen setup inside, which really dresses up the interior. If you're a gadget person, you are definitely going to love that dual screen setup. On top of that, of course, we have that class-leading rear seat legroom, class-leading front seat legroom, and that enormous cargo area in the back. If you're shopping for a new compact crossover hybrid in America, the Sportage should absolutely be on your shopping list, and I would say put this on the list certainly above the Escape Hybrid and the CR-V Hybrid. If you're concerned about long-term reliability, it is possible that the RAV4 will exceed this, although it's worth noting Kia and Hyundai have been doing very well with long-term reliability lately as well. The RAV4 Hybrid might give you slightly better fuel economy, but I think your entire experience is simply going to be better in the Sportage, as long as you're a fan of look. So be sure and let me know what you think about the look down there in the comments section as well. And of course, be sure and check out my full review on the non-hybrid Sportage. You'll find that over on the Alex on Autos channel. As always, hit that subscribe button, comment on the video, find me over at Facebook, Instagram, all those other social places, and I'll see everybody next week.